I keep telling you on this channel, paper pulp is the best material ever because it has so many uses. Today I'm going to focus on one of its most amazing qualities, its restorative powers. So get ready to head to the kitchen and prepare a fresh batch of papier-mâché clay. You can check out my recipe here on the channel, the one that's on the top of your screen, or use your favorite recipe or even buy some pre-made. If you decide to buy pre-made clay, I recommend the one from Das or Activa, which I really like too. So here I have a very pretty nutcracker, a real nutcracker I might add, because it lost an arm in a long battle and its legs are separating from the torso. Apart from that, it's beautiful, and that's exactly why I fell in love with it when I saw it at Hobby Lobby. And the price was unbeatable. Instead of paying $30 or more, I got it for only $2.99 on the discount shelf. I remember when I took it to the cashier, she jokingly said, "Who would buy something broken?" And a dear friend of mine who was with me explained my plans, but I still don't think that person truly believed it was possible. So here I am, ready to show you how we can make magic happen. But first, let me introduce another one of my beloved antique finds straight from an automaton museum, which I bought for the modest price of $70 in an antique shop. This piece has a story very dear to my heart because it comes from a French museum dedicated to automatons, which recently closed and enchanted generations of children, me included. I was lucky to find it during my last trip to France. As you can see, the doll's hand is breaking. I suspect it was made of latex because of its soft texture and the way it cracked, which is typical for this material over time. This doll is at least 60 years old, judging by the materials used: a fiberglass body, a papier-mâché face, and a simple windshield wiper motor for the mechanism. It still works, provided you plug it into a French outlet. But since the hand was so damaged and there was no one to repair it, it ended up for sale for less than I think it's really worth, probably around $300 for a unique piece like that. The feet and claws need a little work too, but overall I was thrilled to take it home. You will see my plan for it in just a moment. Let's start with the nutcracker. For this one, I need to reconnect the legs to the torso, which will require a lot of papier-mâché clay. I'm using it as a filler. The original resin body was hollow, which is why it cracked so easily when it fell. I assume this is how it got broken because it looks like a typical break from a small fall, although it might have arrived broken already. So that's what I'm doing right now, reinforcing the inside with papier-mâché clay, then blocking the legs in it and adding some around the legs for extra strength once it dries. This is the same technique I used to fix the ghost I made for Halloween on its rock. It works really well, but you will need to let the clay dry for at least 2 days and resist the temptation to touch it while drying, or you will weaken the base, which will take longer to dry inside the sculpture than outside. I try to work cleanly, even though I'll smooth the texture later with sandpaper. Next, I work on restoring the arm. I didn't look up what the original nutcracker looked like before making this video, though I probably should. I assumed it had 2 straight arms, but in fact it had a bent arm holding a lollipop, which explains why it cracks so easily. My new arm will be straight, and I will try to make it look as close as possible to the original. The difficulty I already see is the ginger color of the arm, which will require a careful mix of browns. It also has highlights and glitters, which adds to the challenge, but anything is possible when you set your mind to it. To reconstruct it, you want to work around a solid base. That's why I'm using aluminum foil as a skeleton. Then I flatten some air dry clay. I try to make it as thin as possible, like a skin, and cover the arm with it. I always work with flour and water along with my clay. The flour stabilizes the clay if it's too sticky, and the water softens it if it's too dry. But not too much of either, or it will crack while drying. Once the arm is covered in clay, I attach a ball for the hand and blend it with the arm using a sculpting tool, then I let the new arm dry. An important step in achieving a smooth finish is sanding the restored surface before painting. Small defects or surface irregularities are almost always present, so I typically address these using fine grit sandpaper around 220–320 grit. I try to match the original color by mixing different shades of brown. When I get something that looks like the gingerbread color, I apply it to the arm. I think I nailed the color, it's blending well, but I might need a few lighter brush strokes to maintain the illusion. Then I paint the hand a cream skin color, I let it dry, repaint the crisscross pattern on the arm white because I think that's how it should have been, and I apply glitter once it's dry. Done! It's standing now and no longer draws attention with broken limbs. It works, it wasn't too difficult overall because this is a pretty simple shape to reconstruct. Now the antique doll is going to be a bigger challenge. For this doll, the original hand was cracking in multiple places, which is normal for its age. Some people might patch it with new latex, but I'm not going to do that because I know it will be a very temporary repair before other parts crack. Also, the other hand is completely missing, so I'll need matching materials for both. When I say it's missing completely, I mean the supplied hand is not the original. It's likely a replacement for a different doll used after the original hand broke, or a mismatch after the museum closed. Looking at the proportion, this small wooden hand does not match the doll at all. It's way too small, so I won't be reusing it. I'm going to make a new hand. First, I start with the original cracked hand and cover it with a thin layer of papier-mâché clay to solidify it and make it less prone to cracking. Unlike rubber, papier-mâché is chemically stable over time and can be repaired and stabilized fairly easily. The original hand wasn't very detailed, and that's okay because these dolls are meant to be looked at from a distance. It had no nails, just simple lines suggesting the fingers. I'll maintain that look. I smoothed the clay as much as possible so it feels delicate like porcelain, making sure it's uniform everywhere to avoid cracking as it dries. The other hand is trickier because I have no idea what it originally looked like. I take inspiration from the small hand to make it slightly different from the other. I know she was holding a fan, so I need a more curved palm. I start with a foil armature, rough and blocky at first, and refine the proportions. I separate the thumb from the other fingers. I work around the thumb to make it the right size, then focus on the other 4 fingers, sculpted together. I isolate the index finger by cutting through the foil with a sharp tool. The rest of the fingers stay sculpted in the mask. I take my time so the index looks extended and realistic, but not as chubby as the thumb. I slightly curve the other fingers and draw lines to separate them. I round the lines at the fingertip and slightly curve the foil toward the tip for more realism. I'm quite happy with it, even though it's not perfect. It works for me for now. I might extend the index finger later. I let everything dry roughly 1 day before I paint. As before, I finish by sanding the surface with fine grit sandpaper to ensure it is smooth and ready for paint. Since I start with a fairly grey base, I need a primer before painting to reproduce the original skin tone. I didn't do that on the Nutcracker because the surface was smaller, but here I spend more time to make the hand look as close to the original as possible. I apply some white to the hands first. It almost looks like she's wearing gloves. I let that layer dry, then I mix several shades of brown until I get as close as possible to the original color. I did this off camera. Depending on your model, you will need to experiment a bit to get the right mix. When you think you have the color, apply it as the first layer. You may need up to 4 layers to cover the entire hand evenly. And now, I can call the work complete. I will let it dry, then apply some wax for durability. Honestly, I think I did a decent job. The hands look much better than before. It's not perfect, but it's definitely improved. What do you think? Would you be interested in trying it yourself? Tell it to me in the comments. I hope so, because this is an ingredient that can fix almost anything hard that's broken where super glue wouldn't work, especially when parts are missing or too small to glue back. If this video inspired you or was useful, please give it a thumbs up. On this channel you will find plenty of other tricks to craft smarter. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video. Happy crafting!